I'm telling you, it's not a coincidence. My motto in this world now is there are no coincidences in this world, just connections. And I love that. And I tell that to people, and they have started to realize that, yes, you can apply that to a lot of things. I, of course, apply it to the angels, but it really shows to us that we are all connected. And this is a journey that we don't understand, and we will all understand it when we get to heaven and are joined with our angels, I think.
Hey, welcome to another episode of The Day After. We are so glad to have you here. On today's episode, we sit down with Rebecca, who graciously opens up about the tragic death of her college-age son. Rebecca offers encouragement and hope on dealing with the grief and pain of losing someone so close. And don't forget to rate and review The Day After wherever you listen to podcasts. I promise it really does go a long way to helping us run this show, as well as sharing the show with people in your life that you think could benefit from hearing our guest stories. All right, go grab a glass of snake wine, get cozy in your favorite chair, sit back, and enjoy the show.
I can really speak from my own experiences. Right after Dane died, about the next year, my father-in-law died at age 93. And it was the most beautiful end to his life. We got to be there for the last rites. He was aware, he was mouthing the words to the Lord's Prayer, and we were all together, and it just made us all feel so good in the sense that we were saying goodbye to him. The year before, my world was rocked by this shock of a lifetime. I'll never recover from it. The death of my 22-year-old son. You know, it was it was a Sunday afternoon, and it was about 3 o'clock, and I was in my bedroom, and I heard the doorbell ring, and my husband went to the door to get the door, and I could hear some mumbling, talking, so I knew, I better go out there because somebody's here. And as I'm coming out of my bedroom door, I see two sheriff's deputies walking into my dining room. And my training as a journalist, I know right off the bat, this is not good. And literally, I looked at Paul, and I couldn't understand the look on his face necessarily. They hadn't said anything to him specifically yet. He knew something was up. But I looked at him and I said, "Who died?" I knew right away
really?
someone died. And I think I shocked the sheriff's deputies because I think they're prepared to say, "Ma'am, please sit down. We want to share some sad news with you." I said, "Who died?" And they looked at it and they're like, "Well, we're here to talk about your son, Dane." I said, "Is Dane dead?" And they're like,
No way.
"Yes."
Oh my
I
God.
knew, I didn't, I said, "Hurry up and tell me what happened," because they were going too slow.
Right.
They were trying to ease into it. And I said, I just knew in my heart. And then, we sat down, and then I said, "Hurry up and tell me what's going on." And then they started telling the story. They said he fell from a, a parking garage
What?
3 stories up.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, "What?" Immediately, I thought he must have jumped, right?
Right.
Maybe possibly to commit suicide. But how could my precious son that I love and that I think is, at the top of his game and doing everything right, happy as a lark, why would he commit suicide?
Right.
And they said, well, through our investigation and from talking to those, nobody was with him at the time, but talking with people that were connected to him afterwards, after he was found, they believe he was trying to jump into an outside deck on the second floor
No.
of an apartment that was connected to the parking garage. So you could
Ugh.
imagine, and they actually could trace his steps. And there was some video from the outdoor cameras of this apartment complex. So they knew that he had tried to go up on the second floor, but there was no way he could go from that angle to jump into the onto the deck. So he went up to the third floor and then tried to lower himself down, but it was just not going to work. I mean, he tried to swing himself into, fall onto the deck, and unfortunately hit the railing,
Mm.
and then that propelled him down for two more flights down to the parking lot, and that's where he
Oh my
died.
God.
And to think that that made us feel better, it actually did, because it made more
Yeah.
sense.
Right.
Like, I think I would have had a much harder time if I knew he committed suicide, because then I would be left with so many questions. I know that he had been drinking heavily with his friends, and that makes sense. That he left his friends at his apartment, and he said, "I'll go over to my buddies, and I know how to get in." Well, he thought he could get in, and obviously alcohol probably told him that he could do this when he really couldn't. And so we were still very unsure of why this happened. How could this have gone on? And we actually asked the police. I'm like, "Do you have pictures of where this is?" Like, I had to wrap my head around it. I couldn't picture it in my head how he could go from a parking garage over there. But once we saw the pictures, you could understand. And actually, when we went out he was in Nebraska at the time, coaching with the University of Nebraska women's volleyball team. And so we went out there to collect his all of his clothing and whatever else we wanted to bring home. And the police walked us through, and we could actually see where his hands had been, where his feet had touched the side of the wall. And as weird as that sounds, it gave us
Yeah.
comfort,
Yeah.
because then we could trace his final steps. We know where he landed. We could put a cross there. We hung it there,
Mm,
and I brought sage, and we kind of burned the sage. Have you ever heard of that? Like, you burn sage to kind of release the spirit.
Yeah.
And we prayed there. And right before we
mm.
left, we had to drive back to the airport, and I said, "Let's go one more time and just pray." And we did. And then I got in the car, and there was sun streaming through. Now, this is November, so it was cold, but the sun was streaming through the car. And you know those little, like the dandelion fluffs? You know
Yeah.
what I'm talking
Yeah.
about? Not the full fluff from a flower, just like one little thing was flying through the car at the time. And I was like, "Paul, look." And he's like, "What?" He's like, I said, "Dad." Because he was like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "The little, this little, it looked like a fairy. It looked so surreal." But with the sun coming through, I said, "It's Dane. It's November. There are no dandelions. There are no fluffs to be flying around." And to me, he was with us, and his spirit was flying away, and
Mm,
we let it out.
that's
We let
amazing.
it out of the
Yeah.
car to go, and
Mm,
we said goodbye.
that's amazing. So when you went to Nebraska, so Dane was you have four kids, right? So Dane was the third.
Correct.
Did the other three come with you guys to Nebraska, or did
No,
just you and your husband go?
no, just my husband and I. Natalie was still in high school. Lynn was out of college, but she was working. And, there's only so much your heart can take. We didn't know what to expect. The people in Nebraska were just beautiful people. The Midwesterners have that stereotypical thing, and it's so true. They were so kind, and people bent over backwards for us. And being part of the community of that volleyball, sports is big at the University of Nebraska,
Yeah.
really big. Um, and people came up to us because they made the team, not made the team, they gave the team warm-up shirts that said Leclerc on the back,
Oh,
Oh, no
and they
way.
gave them to us as well, and the number 4, and it said forever. His number in high school, or I'm sorry, in college, was number 4. So, forever in our hearts kind of thing. And we were wearing them, and people were like, "Where'd you get that shirt? I want to get one of those shirts. I love Dane." He had already met so many people in the community out there, the volleyball community. And I said, "Well, I don't think you can buy them. We're his parents." They're like, "You're Dane's parents?" I mean,
No way.
and they just wrapped their arms around us, and they were so sorry that they had heard the news. It made big news out there, because of tragic death. And we were just blessed by those kind of things to wrap us in our sorrow, but brought us so much joy and filled our hearts with love.
yeah.
Yeah. What was the immediate impact to you, your husband, and your family? Like what kind of things came out of having such tragic
Well,
immediate death?
yeah, kind of one of those like, how is this happening? Right? You'll never understand. And I think initially there's just this shock, and you just have to go forward. You don't even know what
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
Like, when you have somebody that is going to pass, you can adjust, you can think about it, you can absorb it, you can pray about it. Um, Everything happened so fast that we just kind of went on autopilot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, so the impact was just surreal, right? Like it didn't even hit me. This Christmas was the hardest Christmas, and this is the third Christmas since he passed. First one was still a blur. It was the end of October that he died, October 27th. So that it was quick.
2019,
Yep,
2020?
2019.
Yeah, okay.
So
Yep.
that Christmas was a blur, but so many people were still wrapping us, in their hearts. That was helpful. And then the pandemic.
Oh,
Yes.
And then one of the Christmases, 2020, yeah, I'm starting to lose track, but we went on a ski trip to Europe, and it was phenomenal. So we didn't have to sit there and do the same traditions without him.
yeah. That was probably nice.
But this year, he was the one that always carried the Christmas tree in. He's a big guy. He's 6'4", and like just an athlete. And he would carry the Christmas tree over his head and put it on top of our car. And so this year we got a small one,
Mm,
you know,
yeah.
and that was okay. And it was okay. And then I made a special one, like a fake one, a little tabletop, and I just put all of the ornaments that people have given us, the angel ornaments. That's a very common thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys all have them too. So I made a little special tree. And ironically, I had gone into the living room to do that by myself. It was in my own head. I've learned to deal with my grief my own way, in my own quiet. And at the exact same time, I wasn't paying attention to what my husband was doing. But afterwards, we realized he went outside with the extra lights that didn't need to go on the Christmas tree because it was small,
Yeah.
and went outside. And there's a tree that we can see out our bedroom window, and it's an evergreen. And he decorated it, and he comes in, he goes, "Hey, I made a tree for Dane." And I'm
Oh.
like,
Oh, that's
"I
beautiful.
made a tree for Dane in the living room."
Yeah.
And that synergy happens a lot. And I believe it's Dane working through all of us. I can't believe it not to be that way, really.
Right. That's amazing. That's beautiful.
Going back to the shock of it, um, people actually asked me, "Do you think it would have been harder if you knew he was going to die,
Yeah.
or had a long-term illness to end his life? or just this immediate thing? And the only thing I can answer to that is I knew in my heart that I would have preferred him to die instantly, which we really do believe he did,
Yeah.
Yeah.
as opposed to being paralyzed or so injured that he could not contain his or maintain the life he wanted to live.
Yeah.
So that again gave us grace in our heart that we were like, thank you, God. And when we found out that he had, this is interesting. We had a young man call us, one of his classmates called us up and said, hey, I had a dream about Dane. And in the dream, he popped out of a bush and it was right after he fell to his death. And he said he was brushing himself off. And this young man described what he was wearing. And it wasn't like khakis and a golf shirt. No, I mean, it was very descriptive to what he was wearing that night.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And he said, but he kept saying that his side hurt. His side hurt. And we at first didn't know that, but then we got the autopsy and it said that he had broken some ribs. And it makes sense because he hit the railing and then fell off
No
and then fell
way.
to his death. So he would have felt the pain of that.
Yeah.
Because that
Yes.
did not kill him, but the fall down to the parking lot did. And, again, it's telling more. We're finding out more of the stories through dreams. And that was really interesting to us. And when we kind of have put it out to other people, like, if you ever have a dream about Dane, tell us. And you won't believe how many people
That's
have talked to us
amazing.
about it. And yeah,
Have you had dreams about Dane?
I have not, but my husband has. And it's a very consistent theme that Dane comes and hugs you so that you actually
No way.
Oh.
feel the hug. And many people have said they've woken up and they're already crying in their dream, like
Wow.
physically crying.
Right.
Daughter, that happened to my daughter, and it's happened to two of his other classmates that called us separately, had no idea that the other had this feeling or whatever. I'm telling you, I really do think he went to visit some of these people
Oh yeah.
Right.
and give them hugs and knew that they were struggling. And the time that my husband had that dream of him coming, he had been praying to Dane. He's like, Dane, I can't do this. I need a sign. I
Mhm.
need something, to help me get through this. And that night he had the dream. And I'm scared to do that because then what if he doesn't come to my dream? What if I ask him to come to my dream and he doesn't?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've asked for signs. I've asked for Ariana, my wife, to come in my dreams, and I have asked, like, I need a sign. Like, yesterday was or this week has been a really difficult week for me with my grief, and I've done that and I don't get anything. And it's always been this struggle of, I'm like half in, half out of, she can send me signs or she can't, or where is she or what's going on. Like I'm almost like there are things that have been signs and I just haven't fully accepted them. So like that's where I'm at with this weird state. And then, but I do understand that feeling of like, well, what if it doesn't come, or what if she speaks to me some way and I'm not prepared to handle what she has to say? I'm like, I think I will be crushed because I'm already like crushed that she's not with me. But yeah, so I definitely feel you on that.
What about you, Ashley? Like, have you had dreams of your mom?
Yeah, just one actually. One and like very very vivid one. It was about just shortly after or a few months after I moved back from the UK, which was supposed to be a temporary move. And then I fell in love, and and I was I can't remember if it was like right around the time that I met my boyfriend, but I had then gone on to have like this big dilemma about moving back or staying here. But I saw her and I think we were at like a family party, but she was wearing this outfit that like was probably one of the last times that we went to Disney World as a family. And like I had this picture that I was like, this was what she was wearing. This is what she looked like. And to me, that's probably one of the last times that I like remember her as a kid being healthy. So like it was very interesting that in my dream she was like super healthy and in that outfit like that I had, kind of it then like, it was almost like the reminder. Like I was like, wow, that was the time like that I remember her being healthy. Otherwise, she got sick when I was pretty young and obviously passed when I was very young. So I don't remember her healthy a lot. But all that to say that she had yeah, she came to me in my dream. We were at a family party and she was just giving me a hug and telling me how proud she was of me and complimented my nail polish, which like I don't always have my nails painted. And I did, like I had literally just gotten them done. So it was just like such a
Mm.
weird but amazing. Like I remember waking up like I probably had tears in my eyes and I was just like overwhelmed with like joy about it. I just remember being so happy. And I don't really ever ask for signs, but I see them and I like that's like one of my that's why I don't like the whole medium topic is like I just see the signs and I get signs and my family has gotten signs. I kind of mentioned this before, but my little cousin has had like two stories where she never met my mom, so she knows that Aunt Nancy's in heaven. It's my mom's brother's daughter, and one of the times my mom always liked to get the family together and loved when we were all together, and we have like a family cottage, and I. I can't remember if it was like it was after a family weekend or something, and it was she saw my mom's picture that her portrait we have at the cottage, and she was like, "Aunt Nancy was here tonight." And everyone was like, wait, what? What do you mean? And, it's just like, she's obviously not making that up like that. It's so
Right.
real that you just, where would she get that? And then another time she was at Michael's arts and crafts store with my aunt. And again, she said something about Aunt Nancy, and my mom always used to take us to Michael's Arts and Crafts. And again, like my aunt didn't even know that. She like married into our family. She didn't even really know that. So when she told us, we were all like what? So those are just like they take your breath away, honestly. They really
They
do.
do. And, you can blame them away or whatever, but to me, those are messages that you are supposed to hold in your
Yeah,
heart and that keeps us going.
literally.
You're right. I think the little kids, because we have Dane, he the summer before he died was at the lake house of my niece, and she had two kids, and they were probably about 5 and 7. I'm telling you, the 5-year-old, she would like, oh, Dane comes to me every night, and he says good night to me, and she knew him, she played with him. They loved him, so they were, because he was like a big kid himself. So she was very aware of it. But I think it's when they're open to this, they're open to it. And I love it. And she has stayed, when she comes to my house, she wants to put his clothes on. And I let her. I send things to her all the time. And when
Yeah.
she just got onto a soccer team, she asked for the number 4. She
Oh,
wanted to be the number 4. But she just got on the team, so the number 4 had already been given out. Like she was going to get number 20 or whatever. Um, but when it came to the handout day, she got number 4, and they couldn't explain it. They didn't know.
What?
She got it,
No.
and
Come
it
on.
was great. And, so my niece wrote to me, she was, Aunt Becky, she got number 4. Like, we never thought she would get number 4, but they gave it to her without us asking. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, please give it to for my dead cousin,
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then they grabbed a soccer ball so she could just take a picture. And they didn't even realize it. She sent it to me. I saw it on the bottom of the soccer ball was number 4. You know how they number it? Like somebody in
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sharpie
yeah.
was number 4 was on the soccer ball. And Jackie said, we just picked that up out of, it was on the ground. And I said, I'm telling you, it's not a coincidence.
No.
My motto in this world now is there are no coincidences in this world, just connections. And I love that. And I tell that to people, and they have started to realize that, yes, you can apply that to a lot of things. I, of course, apply it to the angels, but it really shows to us that we are all connected. And this is a journey that we don't understand, and we will all understand it when we get to heaven and are joined with our angels, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to go back. You mentioned like when people ask you like, "Oh, would you rather him suffer versus an instant death?" I'm curious if you're able to answer, if you want to answer, like, what is your emotional like response and reaction? Like, you did tell us a little bit about like what your answer would be, but like, what's that emotional charge that you have to that? Because I have an emotional charge to it when people ask me, and I'm assuming that you've been asked more than once, because it seems to be a common thing that people just say to help us feel better. Of
Yeah.
like, if it wasn't quick, they're like, oh well, at least you got to say goodbye. If it was quick, they're like, well, at least it was over really fast and you didn't have to.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, like what is that emotional response that you have to that question?
It's so true what you just said about like everybody tries to analyze it and they try to make it better.
Yeah.
But I have learned so much through this experience that I give people grace so much more.
Mm,
And I actually appreciate the people who can even ask a question about death.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
So
this
true.
stranger came up to me at an event. We were doing a fundraiser and he's like, I didn't know your son, but so many people around here knew him and I knew of him, but I didn't understand how he died. I read the article in the newspaper and it said
mm.
he fell off of a parking garage and it's true. It because they that was written from the police report and it really was
Oh,
true, but it
right.
did sound like he was either pushed or he jumped, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so at first I was just kind of like, ugh. But then I started telling him, and I wanted to tell him the story that, well, he left his friends at his apartment, and I think what a gracious thing he did to leave his friends there. And he said, "I'll go somewhere else and sleep. You guys hang here. I can take
Yeah.
care of myself." Could but that didn't work out. But I like to tell that part of the story and kind of confirm to that guy, even if he is a stranger, that no, he didn't commit suicide. And I mean, I don't think I have to defend anybody if they take their life
Yeah.
because
Mm,
we don't understand what
that's right.
every moment is like for somebody else, right? But, you feel like you have to defend yourself almost or defend my
Yes.
son.
Yeah.
But that was a stranger, so I didn't really care. A lot of people that I care about, I want to tell the story. Um, there was one woman, remember we had the pandemic. So he died end of October, then the pandemic shut us down in March. So if you didn't come to his funeral and then you forgot or you got involved in Christmas and then all of a sudden it was pandemic, you might not see me for a whole year before the pandemic allowed us to
Right.
go out, right? And I so appreciated this woman. I'm not that close to her, but she goes, "Hi, Rebecca." She goes, "I have to tell you, I just want to give you my condolences. I haven't asked how you are doing. How are you doing since your son died?" And I was so gracious because most people feel that after a year, I better not bring it up. Oh, I don't want to make her sad. It makes me happy to talk about him. Or
Mm,
if I don't want to talk about him, I'll just say we're doing okay and move
yeah,
on. But
that's right.
sometimes I want to talk about him. And I like the people who actually ask because none of us want to lose that person. And sometimes I worry about that. Like, if I don't talk about him, am I going to forget him?
Yeah.
Mm,
Of course, I'm not going to forget him. But if you don't keep him on the top of your mind, is he going to just fade away? I mean, already, things have to fade. I mean, we all have to move on. But especially as the mom, if you ask me about my son, I will talk your ear off because I'm so proud of him. I love him and it keeps him alive in my
yeah.
heart. So I love it. So when you ask me the impact, it does change from day to day. It can like some days I'm like, how dare you bring up a, a topic of grief for me? But other most of the time I want them to feel comfortable to ask me about it because it leads me to talk about my son.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you had that experience? Because we're similar. So I'm about 2.5 years where one day you're just like, I can't remember their voice. what does their voice sound like? And it's like I watch a video and I'm just like, okay, that's what it was, but it sounds different to me now. Like in that, I think that happened right around the beginning of this year, and I didn't do well with that. It really, really took me back, and it's definitely something that's been a struggle, right? Like you said, where they're fading because they are cemented in time at the moment of their death. And we are by nature of still existing, growing older, and the world is changing and everything is changing. And I can only remember her. We can only remember them back at that moment of death. And I think that's where like that fading part is like, I just want to bring you along with me, like come into this new
Yeah.
world that like we're creating and we can't. That definitely scares me for sure.
That is a very good description of like, I want to bring you into my, keep you in my life. Um, I could look at pictures of him, but it was really hard to watch video because he was so much in love with life and in love with
Mm.
people. And he was so expressive and he was an athlete. So I have so many videos of him doing things and active and dancing. He loved to dance, even if he wasn't good. Well, he was a good dancer, but he was a terrible singer. But but I love watching that. But then some days, then it just kills me to watch that stuff. And we were just watching this is the end of the men's volleyball season, for NCAA's. To watch those boys, I can picture in my head, Dane, how he played, how he set, how he served, and then I see these other young men doing it, and I'm like, oh, it's brutal. Um, I was one of those moms that recorded everything. I had the big cameras back in the day, and I'm so glad I did because but I haven't been able to watch them, but I have all those videos of him he had the highest pitched voice until his voice changed, and it just cracks me up. And I can still remember when his voice started changing that he forced himself to talk like this, and then he sounded really stupid too.
Yeah.
But he was so embarrassed about cracking, his voice cracking. And then, now he died at age 22. He had this deep, resonant voice and he used it. He was loud and proud. And I I don't want to, yeah, you're right. I don't want to ever lose that in my head. And God bless, video, but we have to make sure we preserve it. Because
Yeah,
what if it goes away or our computer blows up and we're like, ah, got to back it up and save everything. You know, I love that fact that we can keep them alive in our memory as such. But I do miss, he should be a 26-year-old now, you know. Well, I know he's a 26-year-old now, but I haven't seen him, as a
exactly.
26-year-old.
Yeah, I don't think there was much video back in 2000, early 2000s, late 1990s. So I don't know how much. I actually don't think I've seen that much video of my mom. I know my dad has said that she recorded a lot of videos for us, and I haven't watched them yet. I think video, to your point, is like that would be something that would probably like throw me over the edge. Like it would just not be, that would be very hard. But pictures, and because I don't have a lot of video or a lot of pictures, like pictures will run out at some point because she was only, here for so many years. I take pictures incessantly. Like I take pictures of everything. I mean, like it's probably too much, but and every time I'm on the airplane with no Wi-Fi, that's when I go through and delete all these extra pictures I took. But it's so crazy. Like just the little things that you don't realize that like the impact of their death had on you. But like photos and videos are just like, I definitely need to go back in the archives and look at some of those videos because I definitely wouldn't remember my mom's voice like if I heard it right now.
Yeah. Well, and you were so young. You were so young. Can I tell you my story of how I got connected to the Infantino family?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So, if you recall, St. Louis school.
Yes.
So, my oldest son is going to be turning 30. How old are you, Ashley?
Yeah, I just turned 30 in January.
Okay, so same age. Um, And I can remember the letter went out, the newsletter saying there's this young family and they need help. The mom is dealing with cancer. So the dad is, I think you had 4 kids at home at the time,
Yep.
right? And so we all picked a day to make a meal and bring it over. And I had never met the Infantinos or anything. And I'm not even sure if Dane and Nicholas were born yet, or they were probably babies. They certainly weren't at St. Louis.
Yeah, they were young.
And I dropped off a meal, just like all the other families. And I felt really good. And I remember saying a prayer. I hope that, I'm like, for that mother, because as a mother, I was like, as long as you can feed your children, you're not going to feel so bad. Right. And then to find out that Dane and Nicholas would become friends, your dad would be a coach for baseball, CYO. He coached all my kids in CYO, the girls and the
Oh, no
boys.
Yeah.
way. I didn't know
Yeah.
this.
And Dane was even over at your house for prom night
Yeah.
when Nicholas, they were seniors. And your poor crazy parents having to
I know.
host like 30 kids at prom
They
night.
always did that. They always did that.
Oh, that's nuts.
Yeah.
And so, we share so much of this. And then Delana having cancer,
Mhm.
damn it.
I
Like,
know.
Yeah.
there's only so much. But you know what she sent to me? This was the year anniversary. And this is what grief does to you. Like, once you understand grief, you are so much more aware. And
Yeah.
she sent me a picture of the rose. So we brought all the roses to the cemetery so that people could throw a rose down before he was buried. And she kept her rose and she put it in a vase, like, a rose vase on her counter. I could tell it was her kitchen counter. And she kept it there for a whole year. And
No
it
way.
it looked really good. I mean, it just kind of dried there. But she kept it on the counter. Like, most people would be like, clear this crap out. Here, we got guests coming. I don't want that. And she took a picture and she sent it to me. And that meant so much to me because
Mhm.
it meant that he was still on her mind. And she's not even his mother.
It's so funny that you say that because my boyfriend's stepdad died last April time and they did the same thing and I kept one of the roses and we still have it. It's like still on our counter. Like that was like one and I did not know that Delana did that. I didn't know that she did that, but there's like you said, grief changes people and you just become so it's almost like because you've gone through that, like you're like in this moment, I know I would want to keep that rose or I would, or it's what, 1 year later, like 1 year hurts. And my friend does not know this yet, but her mom just passed recently and this Mother's Day is going to be her first Mother's Day as a mom and her first Mother's Day without her mom. So I've already ordered like cupcakes to go to her house. So she won't hear this beforehand, so I won't spoil the surprise.
Right.
Those firsts, like those moments, the first year, the second year, heck, 21 years later, like though you just are so much more aware of important dates and moments, I think. After
Just the other day, I was, how you scroll through things on your phone, and it was to buy something for Mother's Day, and they put this disclaimer up, and it said, "This site focuses on gifts for Mother's Day, and if that is difficult for you, we suggest you pass by."
love that.
And I said, wow, some marketer has had a loss of a mother
Yes, exactly.
and knows that that's a trigger. And I was like, what a blessing. And I'm like, I wrote it down. Those are the people I actually write to those companies and I say, thank you so much for doing that. You know what other company I wrote to? The Hallmark.
Yes.
So every year for the past like 30 years, they have come out with a dog ornament every year. a different breed, right?
Yeah.
2019, the year of my son's death. Guess what breed was that year?
A Dane. A Great Dane.
Great Dane. A Great Dane.
No way.
It's
Yes.
amazing.
And my neighbor saw it and she bought me one. And I lost my mind because this was like now November,
Right.
right? And Christmas
So
was coming. So I ordered like 10 of them and I kept them for my children and like grandparents and all that kind of stuff. And it was great. And then all of a sudden, like after the holidays, like in January, I thought to myself, oh my God, they're never going to be around again. And I went on the line and they were all gone. They move on,
yeah.
right? It's so I wrote to Hallmark or I called and they're like, sorry, lady, nope, it's gone. I said, there has to be a warehouse somewhere that they have to have them in the back.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I wrote to the company and I told the story about Dane and was, Great Dane in our hearts and all that kind of stuff. And sure enough, somehow it trailed back. Hallmark is based in St. Louis. And I have a friend, I used to be in television news. He was now an anchor. I reached out to him and I said, do you have any contacts at Hallmark? And he goes, well, I know the PR lady. I said, please call her and just tell her and send this email to get to the right person. It got to the right person. They sent me a box, like a case, and it arrived on his birthday, March
No.
15th.
Oh my
No
gosh.
way.
That's
How is
amazing.
that possible?
Yeah.
That's
So I
amazing.
called up my friend who is an anchor and he's like, can we do a story? And we did a story about it
That's awesome.
because it was still during the pandemic and everybody was still doing stories and you just did Zoom stories. And he interviewed me and then he interviewed the PR lady. And we're like, whenever we can, we try to do our best to help people, in their memories and all this stuff. Because that is the first one that goes up on the tree every year is
Yeah.
that Great Day.
Oh, I love that.
But do you see what I mean about the connect? There are no coincidences, just connection. My connections to my friend in St. Louis, where Hallmark is based, and that they sent it and it arrived on his birthday.
Yeah, of all days.
There's so much of that like I've seen tracing over the past couple of years for me. I think the interesting thing with the rose, like you guys were talking about, and mentioning how it's like, oh, it felt like Delana still had Dane on her mind. And I think that that's actually something I wanted to call out because to me, that becomes one of the most isolating things of going through this grief is you sit right like I'm sitting with this every day. Ashley, you're sitting this with every day. Rebecca, you sit with this every day. You wake up and you're like, there is a loss in my life. But the world around us is like, yeah, I'm sad, but like I have my life. It hasn't really changed. I have my own stuff and they move on. And it's not to their fault. It's just the way that things work. So I think it's so beautiful, like you said, of like, oh, she still thought of Dane. Like it was still on top of her mind. And it just helps us not to feel so alone. Like, oh, I'm alone in this. I go home and the grief is mine. I go to bed and I cry by myself because who else is there? So I think that's something that's so beautiful. And I think that's an amazing thing. When you go through your life now, every day, things come up you have to deal with, amazing moments happen, difficult moments happen, new holidays, like all this stuff. Like what has been one of the most significant things that has changed for you? And then how do you handle the grief now? Like where is the spaces that you've created and the tools that you've used to kind of just be with it and tap into it?
I try to give other people grace and I also give myself grace. And
That's a big one.
I'm blessed now that I don't have as high pressure of a job. But I literally will go lay down on my bed and absorb it. I don't brush it away. I focus on it. I acknowledge my grief and I let it flow. Like my husband cries so much in church that I bring Kleenexes now. I mean, we're talking 3.5 years,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and I just know it's because it's bringing this back, and you're close to God. And this may sound weird, but I don't really know who I'm praying to anymore. Am I praying to God or am I praying to Dane? And it sounds like that sounds how you
No, I
can't
get it.
compare your son to God,
Right.
but
I
he is
get
a
it.
child of God
Yeah.
and he is now with God. So I don't really care. I think spirituality is what helps us get through. My faith that I will be resurrected along with my son and join him someday in heaven carries me every day. That is what
Mm.
carries me. And so by giving myself grace to understand or just face my grief, I, I will do whatever it takes. And if it means telling people I can't come today. Oh, I know a lot of people are like, do you want to go for coffee? Do you want to talk about it? Really? No.
No.
Well, there's times I don't.
Yeah.
Like like, if you say, "Okay, next Tuesday I wanna have coffee because we need to talk." Like, I might need to talk now, but next Tuesday at 9, you
Yes.
know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, but I do feel comfortable. Like, I do know that those people mean well,
Of
and
course.
I say to them, that doesn't work for me, but if I call you, please take my call because maybe I do want to talk. I really utilize my spouse, and so see, we've got all different things. I lost a son. Ashley lost a mother. You lost a spouse. Like it without a spouse holding me up, I don't know what I would do. Ashley, you had siblings, but I think that's so tricky for siblings.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really worry about my surviving children because they have to support their parents and each other and themselves. And for you, CJ, I don't know what it's like. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
And then you have to be good for your kids, you know.
Yeah.
Luckily, my kids were older, like my surviving kids, but I know I wasn't the mother that I probably wanted to be.
Oh, 100%. That's what plagues me all the time. And now there is nobody, like they're now at the age where it's like, I need to go here, I need to go here, I need to go here. So, and I have three, and every single day there's something that I'm disappointing at least one of them. And I just like, I go to bed at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm just a bad guy every day. Like I know they don't mean it and they would never feel that way, but it's like I'm constantly having to say no or disappoint, and it's so upsetting. But I wanted to ask, were you so you were a news anchor, were you working when Dane died? Did you have to go on air?
No,
Okay.
no. But what was interesting, I had left the local news in 2017. So I had started
Okay.
business. And that's again another blessing. But it was a news story here. And
Yeah.
so of course I have very dear friends and they were the ones who called me and they're like, what would you like us to say? Or and like I kind of typed up a paragraph about him and I look back at it and I'm like, that was such a horrible paragraph. But it was
Yeah.
literally, 12 hours after he died, and they were trying not to bother me and, but
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, no, I wish give me a little more time. I want
Yeah.
to but they also picked the picture off of his the website from the volleyball team. Well, they used to do this thing. They knew they were getting their picture taken, so they made sure they looked the worst. Like, they would go and get terrible haircuts. They would make themselves look terrible because they didn't care because they just knew, like, the other team was looking them up. But I was like, "Don't show that picture. Oh my god, he looks horrible." Like, "Please show this, like, his graduation picture or, this was our family picture." So I did and they were kind. They did, but I was like, "Oh my gosh." And,
Anything but
I
that
had
photo.
yeah, I had quite a following, obviously because I was a news anchor, but
Mm.
now because he was so popular, even among the volleyball world. Think about all the universities that have volleyball teams. The NCAA they covered his death. He was on the USA development team when he was a
Oh,
teenager.
seriously?
So like most of the coaches all around the country knew of him because, if he had grown a few more inches, he might have kept on with the USA team. But he stopped at 6'4", and that's not tall enough for the USA team. But we got cards from universities all over.
Damn.
People, it was just incredible. And so he now is more popular than I was ever at any height of my popularity. And when people look me up, he pops up, because I'm connected
Wow.
obviously to him.
Right.
And I did do a story about him because he was colorblind. And remember that you could get colorblind glasses to see what it
Yes.
like. So I did a story about him, and we went to the Lilac Festival. This was the year he died, and so he could see what like reds looked like because he never could see red. And it was such a fun. And that story has been seen like a million times now because when people looked him up, they wanted to know about his death, but then they're like, "Oh, what is that? Oh, let me look at," and it was good. I can watch that one over and over again. That one was fun because it was mom and me, or mom and son, and of course we hugged at the end.
I was gonna ask how like the community, because well, you knew the volleyball community, but the volleyball community at the University of Nebraska, I don't know if you guys had a chance to like really get to know them, but just kind of going back to that when you first went down there, or when you went down there after he passed, them wrapping their arms around you. Like I just remember my parents and I just went to Spain, and my parents got to meet like all my friends from Europe. Like I had this whole different life. And they were just like, they just kept saying how amazing it was to meet all those people and see like these people who were then obviously telling them about me and all that stuff. But was that like, what was that like? And what has it been like just to meet his friends that maybe you didn't know, as close, because he was playing volleyball everywhere.
Right. So yeah, he had graduated from Loyola of Chicago with the men's team, and then got a job with the women's team in Nebraska, and he had gone out there. And yeah, but as I said, that Midwestern style they were so gracious to us. And literally, people were waiting for us. They had organized this so we could sit and watch a women's volleyball game from the coach's suite. And people came in and to meet us and talk to us. They had organized it. I'm telling you, the University of Nebraska was great. And all the women many of them have stayed in touch with us.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's the great thing about social media. Um, Many of them go back to the site where he passed on the anniversary, and they send us a picture. They celebrate each other
Yeah.
and Dane, and they only knew each other for about 6 months, And the man who they lived together in the same apartment. He was a coach from Hawaii, and Dane came from Chicago, and they met there, became fast friends. He now dedicates his volleyball. He's a professional volleyball player now, and dedicates it to Dane, brings Dane's
No
shirt
way.
with him, puts it on the bench.
I
Oh,
love that.
And last year they won this particular championship, and it was streamed live, and he spoke about Dane, and it was just beautiful. I'm like, these people just don't even know what kind of impact they're having on us.
yeah.
They keep us close, and I'm so gracious. Now, I don't know in 10 years, like, well, he might not be a professional volleyball player at that point, but for him to even think, and he reaches out to the Rochester people all the time. He's met the Rochester players, and they party together, and he's like, we all knew Dane. And so we are so blessed by that kind of community. The McQuaid community, we are blessed by that. Several of his high school friends continue to come over to our house. And sometimes, like, when we get together, like, I don't recognize them all now because they're like,
Man.
I remember them when they were 17, and now they're 26.
Yeah.
They're getting, and, it's just great. I love
That's amazing. That it's so good that people are able to keep him alive in like the avenue that he was experiencing life, right? So it's like you get this portion of keeping him alive within the context that you knew him, and then like there's all these other contexts that he existed, that his spirit is still alive in there, and that's unique, I think, and very
Very
special,
special.
right? Like that's an amazing thing.
You know what I did? Like, 'cause so the funeral was pretty darn tough, obviously. Um, and the church was packed and it was a blur, kind of as you can imagine. Well, the next week went out to Chicago and there was a memorial service, and so they ushered us in first, and we sit at the front in the front pew. I was like, I'm not doing this again. I stood up and I turned around so I could see everybody coming in because
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
didn't even know who was at the funeral.
Yeah.
right.
And I just took on all this positive energy that way. Sit in a church, you have your back to, well, if you're in the front, your back, buddy. And I have learned that I don't want to do that at funerals anymore. I want to be either in front looking back or in the way back and absorbing because everybody is there with love in their heart. And I've learned so much through this whole process. And
That's amazing. There's one thing I wanted to touch on, which I think is like it's okay if it's not somewhere you want to go, but I'm really curious to how the relationship with your husband changed. Like I know, at least from um other instances, either like a death of a young child could really make it difficult to be together. You come closer. So if you're comfortable, like I'd love to talk a little bit about how that relationship has evolved, how you guys have navigated that together. I'm sure there's challenges. We don't need to go into specifics, but like I'm curious to see like what you guys have done, and I think that could be an inspiration too for other people who are going through that.
we're pretty open. We were pre-Cana counselors for our church, so we talk openly about our marriage and what has worked and what it doesn't. And I, so just like people coming up to you asking, you're like, was it easier because he died so quickly? Opposed to sounds so horrible. Other people would be like, well, be careful because they say like 70% of marriages fail.
Yeah.
Child die.
Yep.
Like, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for
Right.
highlighting
Yeah.
that.
Thanks for the confidence.
Yeah, it's like as if it's not going bad already.
They mean well because they care for you, but they just don't know how to phrase it.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
went out to the University of Nebraska. One of the couples that came to us in the suite, and they introduced themselves. Hi, I'm Debbie and Dan, and it meant nothing to us, but they were very kind. And I remember after we met them for a little while, they had lost a son at age 20, they were 22, but it had been many, many years for them, right? But they were invited to come, and that's still kind of weird because it's like you're strangers, but you're angel parents. They call us angel.
Yep.
Anyways, I got up to go get another soda at the concession, and the guy there, he goes, "Do you know who you're sitting with?" I'm like, Deb and Dan. I don't know. I don't know. They're like, they're the number one contributors to the University of Nebraska. I was like, oh, they're like billionaires. I'm like, didn't matter to me one
Yeah.
Yeah.
bit. The only thing that connected me was that we shared a loss. And so a blessing. But that man pulled my husband aside and he said, whatever you do, don't pull away from your wife. You can't do this alone. Don't think that, oh, I'll be strong and brave and, whatever. He said,
Hmm.
because that's what I did. And I almost ruined my marriage. He said, your vulnerability is what she will love, and you will, hold each other close. And we have, and I know that we have clung to each other. And I, I mean, I can't say that we're closer than we ever were because that you would have to have a death in order to be close like that.
Yeah.
And that's
Right.
not the case. But I am so grateful that my spouse is the most wonderful man in the world. I am so
Yeah.
blessed.
That's amazing. So you would say vulnerability is what was the way to navigate through this, which makes sense. And sometimes the hardest things to do is the easiest prescription, right?
Or the best prescription, yeah. How have how has it how has it been? It's a weird way to say that, but like seeing each of your children, your other children kind of go through this and grieve this loss. I know like there's a part of grief that you have to do like your own grieving, but there's still like that family element of it too. I can't imagine. I feel like that would be like second to losing your son is watching your other children lose their brother.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it was tricky, and like I said, I know I wasn't there for them in the beginning, like, that I would have wanted to, um, but I know there was some times where one of my daughters was like, "Mom, you can't turn our house into a shrine for Dane." In other words, kind of reminding me, "We're here too."
Yeah.
And we've kinda come to terms with it because I said, "You have to let me be in my house. I need to be in my house." But, like, we've kind of met each other halfway, and now I have a small area where it's kind of the shrine to Dane. Um, and, but that was her way of reminding me that don't forget about us. And there was times that she would kinda make jokes, and I would say, "Too close, too close,"
Mm,
"Too not nope, don't go there, don't go there," when she's like, "Mom, that's the way I can handle it, otherwise I'm gonna cry."
Yeah.
So I have to let her grieve the way she needs to grieve, and I know my youngest daughter, she was, let's see, so she had just graduated from high school. She was a freshman in college. Can you imagine? Your brother dies in first, you have to pull her home, then the second semester, COVID shuts her down,
Oh my god.
anyways. When she turned 20, I remember I went and we were in the car together. I had gone down to see her for her birthday, and she said, "Mom, he'll never know me as a woman, like he'll only remember me as his little sister." Because he went away to school when she was a freshman in high school and didn't really see her develop into an adult. And I said, "Honey, he's watching you. He knows everything that's going on in your life." And that night, she had a dream about him. And of course, that was presence of mind. She was thinking
wow.
about,
Yeah.
but he came to her too. And for my oldest son, who again went away first, they're 8 years apart. So it was more like big brother bullying the little brother and, that kind of thing. So that relationship never really solidified as adults, right? And but luckily that man has been able to tell us, like, "I'm really missing Dane today." Um, he doesn't talk about it a lot, but when he does, I know that it's in his heart. And so again, you can't prescribe grief. You don't know
Correct.
how it's going to hit you. It's not like he's gonna necessarily be crying in the corner. Like if he was, then I'd be like, "Oh, you must be thinking about Dane." But, it's when you're in your head and you're driving in the car and that song on.
Hmm.
No. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know how to help them through that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I almost think it's the acknowledgement of that, right? Like my kids immediately were, okay, let me step up and be mommy. And, you know, like, be happy, dad, just be happy, like, whatever you need. And there were so many moments where I had to sit them down and be like, listen, like, you're going through your stuff too. And I am a resource for you. You are not a resource for me. Like, I have my resources and I appreciate it. And it's so beautiful that you want to help me. I'm like, but your shoulders are so much smaller. Like, let me handle it. Now, that sounds like it was this beautiful exchange, but like, as as you know, like, especially that first year, and I say even to now, I'm just starting to get to a place where I'm like, oh, I think I can I think I can show up as a dad. Maybe I can do this. Not perfectly, but maybe I can. So like, it obviously sounds beautiful in retrospect, but there were so many of those conversations where I'm like, you guys are going through it. I don't know what it's like to lose a mom. I don't know what you went through. I don't know how it's like to walk into school and
Yeah.
hear your friends complaining about their parents. Like, I don't know these things. All I can do is provide an environment for you to feel these things if you let me, and just be there for you. That's all I could do. And that breaks my heart too, because I'm like, I want to be the one that helps you, but I know that most likely all I can do is just be a safe space.
Mhm.
And they're going to find people in their life that are going to help them. And I think Ashley like could probably speak to this, is like, your dad actually told me, and I think I mentioned this before, he's just like, they will grieve at every milestone in their life. It is not a, oh, I'm just grieving and this is the same grief. Like, I carry the same grief.
Yeah.
My children, it's going to morph and change. So I just have to keep making sure that they have support. And whatever that support looks like, I don't know. I just have to be open to hearing what they need. And I've definitely failed miserably at it. But it is something I try to focus on.
Probably haven't failed.
Yeah. You have self-grace. And I know, perhaps we need to, kind of finish off a thought here. But I remember my daughter got married and I thought to myself, "Oh, they will never marry, never marry." And I said that to my husband and he said, "Well, the reception after his funeral, that was the reception."
No.
Yeah.
And we just never knew his bride.
Yeah, that's right.
And again, sometimes you have to make yourself laugh
Yeah.
at the situation. And I'll share one last story with you. So the first person who talked about seeing Dane in his dream was my oldest son. And Doug came down. I can still see him sitting at the counter, and he said, "Hey, I had a dream about Dane." And I said, "Oh, you did?" I said, "Oh my gosh, tell me about it." And he's like, "Chill, mom." He goes, "Actually, it wasn't Dane. It was a woman came to me." And I said, "Oh." And she said, "Hey, I'm Dane's girlfriend in heaven." I said,
No way.
"Really? That's really cool." And I said, "Was she tall?" Because I'm tall. tall. So And he goes, "I don't know, but she was really pretty." And her name was Celine. Like, that's how much and then that was all she said. And it went off. And it just made me feel good. I said, "Oh, he has a girlfriend in heaven. Oh, I'm so glad he's not alone."
Yeah. That's amazing. Those are amazing gifts. Like,
Yes.
seriously.
So definitely want to be respectful of your time, but there was one other thing that I think Ashley and I were interested in too, is there seems to be a few who have these really intense tragic experiences who end up wanting to give back to that community that they've been thrusted into. And I know that you have done some philanthropic work, and just wondering if you could talk about like how you got into that. What does that look like, and how is that affecting your life and your relationship to your grief?
Um, it's really heartwarming to know that people are so willing to help you at every step along the way. And I know that right off the bat, we established a scholarship at his high school, and that made us feel good. But my daughter said, "You know what? They don't need any more scholarships at that high school. We got to do something for people that in true need." So she started her own foundation through the Rochester Area Community Foundation. It's called the Alpha Heart Fund, because she wanted to do her own thing. And I said, "Have at it, go for it." And she's like, "We need to help, underprivileged people." And I
Hmm.
said, "That's great. Right now, I can't help you, but I will eventually, and I've come around to it. And then we've created these volleyball tournaments. We've raised money. She does a birthday a fundraiser every year for Dane's birthday. And she has done a great thing. She now has an employer that will match. So they gave her $2,000. She raised $2,000 and they matched it. I was like, "Wow, I didn't know
That's
companies
awesome.
did that
That's
anymore."
amazing.
And so she's doing that, and we are trying to start a boys volleyball team at Virtus High School, which is in the city of Rochester, and they love it. It's an all boys school. Dane graduated from McQuaid, so it really makes a lot of sense that we would use the money that my daughter helped raise for that, and we'll let the high school scholarship remain at McQuaid. Interestingly, we have not been able to come to terms with how to give that scholarship up. But I've learned, wait, give yourself grace. It's not the right time. That money is making money. It's in the big pot.
Yeah.
And so we are so gracious. I think this year will be the first year that we'll be able to give out that scholarship. And hopefully in the fall, we'll have the first volleyball team at Virtus High School. And so it's really helping us. It's helping my husband a lot because he's really taken that on. I help out with the volleyball tournament at Hot Shots because that's my thing. I play volleyball there. I love all the people, but he likes to be like in a team and a coach, and he likes to do that. So I could see him being like going to the high school every day when they're having practice, because he loves that kind of thing. And that's really going to carry us through because it's been 3.5 years and we haven't really done anything substantial yet with the money, but that's
Yeah,
okay. It's okay.
that's all right.
And the good thing is all these friends and family members who have given us money, they're okay with it. Like they're giving us grace too. So we've held the money in escrow. It's been growing, and now we can wrap our head around it because there's a lot of ins and outs,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
we paid for a couple of retreats at Loyola for the volleyball team there because Dane loved going on retreat. He was on the retreat team, and we knew that was great. He also loved cooking, so we hired a chef to go and teach the boys. I call them boys. I mean, they're in college, but to teach them how to cook so that when they get out of school, they'll be able to teach how to cook. Because Dane he was a little cocky too, and he'd invite a girl over and cook for them, and he's like, "Mom, they love that stuff." And so, in that, we honor his swagger and his ability to think highly of himself, and by teaching other young men to do the same and learn a skill, and
Do you ever find yourself like praying to him or asking him like what would you want us to do?
my husband does that a lot. I like I said, I don't know if I'm praying to Dane or to God, but
Yeah.
I know he is helping me. I'm like, help guide me, guide me. I don't know that I give him like, what should we do with the money? I don't think those kind of prayers, but I'm like, please help me, Dane. Like, and support me. And I feel it. I do feel it.
So we do you said you listened, so we have the lightning round at the end. Just to end on a little bit of a different note. But before that, is there any one last thing that you would want to say to somebody or advice to give to anybody who either is going through this or is close to somebody going through this?
It sounds so, cliche, but you don't have to worry about saying something, being there, and just, coming over without invitation is okay, because I'm not going to call you to come over and let me cry on your shoulder.
That's
You
right.
show up, and I will cry on your shoulder if I need to. I remember I had a coworker, and she called. It was right after Dane died. It was the week right before the funeral, and I was like, she goes, I don't want to come over there because you got all your family, and what am I going to say? And I said, you know what, I got to go get my hair colored tomorrow. Can you just come? And she just sat in the salon.
Oh man, that is so good because I
Right.
don't think people realize that. Like, I'm not reaching out, right? I'm not going to reach out. One, like my emotional capacity, my energy is so low. I'm not going to reach out. Like, but somebody just to show up and to be like, "Hey, I'm here. Let's just sit. Not have to do anything. No expectations." Like that. You're right. That is so powerful. It's so powerful.
That was the best
Yeah.
gift she could ever give me.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Her time sitting there.
All right, Ashley, are you gonna go first?
Sure. Just lightning round, like we said, like lighten the mood with some lightning round questions. because it's approaching on summer, I was curious to what your favorite flavor of ice cream is.
Mint chocolate chip for sure. And there's a dairy in Pennsylvania. It's called Manning's Dairy, and there's a couple locations, but it's my husband's from Scranton, that Scranton area. And every time we go down Route 81, I plan it. So like that's my meal. The best ice cream ever.
It's funny you picked a food question, Ashley. I did too. So what's something that you could eat for a week straight?
Believe it or not, Swedish meatballs and mashed potatoes with gravy. I love mashed potatoes with gravy. And my mother's Swedish meatballs, I could eat them every day. Every day. I ask for that every birthday. Like she'll say,
Oh,
"What do you
that's
want me to
wild.
make you for your birthday?" Still, she's 86.
Oh my gosh. All right. What is your favorite season? Considering we get to take advantage of all 4 seasons where we live.
Yeah, I love them all. But, I got married in October. And so I really love the fall. But now his death
Yeah.
is, and actually, he died the day before our 30th wedding anniversary.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was really rough. But we had gone away on the Friday and the Saturday, my husband and I, up to Niagara on the Lake. And we had just returned on that Sunday, and that's when we found out, we were told about his death. So you have to celebrate when you can celebrate.
Mhm.
And, but I still just love the colors and, yeah, it's got to be fall.
Yeah, that's my favorite season, hands down. If I could live in perpetual fall, that'd be
Yeah.
amazing.
Except I don't like raking. No more raking.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
All right. So my last question is, if you could ask God one question, what would it be?
Was, was this the plan? Was
Mm,
this the plan? Yeah. And of course, I want to know, what am I supposed to learn from this plan? But I don't know. Like I feel bad asking God questions because it seems like he's all knowing, and we will all figure it out when we are with God. So I'm just waiting. You know, my husband and I actually said this. We're like, we'll be jealous of the other, whoever dies first, because that one gets to see Dane first. And we're not rushing our life away, but I can't wait.
well, we really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I feel like there was so much more there, but definitely appreciative of your time and being on and sharing Dane and everything you've gone through with us.
Absolutely. My heart is with you all.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Day After. You can find this podcast and more at our website at www.thedayafter.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you take a moment to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast.